He just wanted to finish mopping the floor. But one arrogant challenge brought back a storm he buried 20 years ago. Who was this janitor, and why did his silence shake everyone? It started with a laugh. Not a light one, but that loud, echoing, cocky kind. The kind that cuts through the air and makes people look up without knowing why. Daniel Mitchell stood dead center in the dojo, black belt tied tight, chest puffed like a rooster ready to perform. His voice rang through the gym like a dare. "Hey, janitor, what do you say to a little spar?" He smirked, glancing toward the far corner where the mop moved steadily across the floor. "But you've never seen a real fight in your life." The mop stopped. Slowly, deliberately, Brandon Lewis lifted his head. He didn't say anything at first, just looked, a still, unreadable calm on his face. The same calm people mistake for weakness, the kind that makes fools brave and quiet men dangerous. He'd only been working here for 3 weeks. Always came after hours. Quiet, no fuss. But tonight the advanced class had run late. And now here he was, standing in a room where no one really saw him. "I don't want to interrupt your training," he said, voice low, respectful. "Just finishing up." Daniel chuckled, loud and theatrical. "Hear that?" He's too scared to step up. He spun toward the students like a bad actor looking for applause. Bet he's never even stepped on a mat. A few laughs rose, but not many. Most students looked down. Awkward. Everyone felt it. Something wasn't right about the way Daniel spoke. Cruelty wearing a grin. Brandon bowed his head again and resumed mopping. Quiet, but Daniel wasn't done. He walked closer, that sneering grin sharper now. "Come on, don't be shy. I'll go easy. Show them what a mop-swinging martial artist looks like." Brandon's hands tightened on the handle, but his voice didn't rise. "I really don't want to bother you," he said, softer now, but something steely behind the calm. "Please, let me do my work." Daniel's smile faltered for just a second. Then came the raised voice, the stinging tone. "Oh, you're serious. That's too bad. Guess some people were born to clean the floor, not stand on it." The silence that followed was heavier than his words. Some students winced, but no one spoke. Brandon stood there, head bowed, but he wasn't looking at the floor anymore. Not really. His eyes were locked on something far away, something only he could see. A fight, a ring, blood on the mat, and a name he hadn't heard in 2 decades. Silent Storm. They used to whisper it like legend. 5-time world champ. Cold, clinical precision. The fighter who never spoke, never blinked, never missed. They said he was born in the fire, a ghost in the cage. But Brandon had walked away from all that. One fight, one mistake, and it all came crashing down. He'd vowed never to return, never to let that part of him breathe again. But now, Daniel's voice kept pushing. Louder, crueler. "What's the matter? Afraid because of your skin? Or just because deep down you know you're nothing but a janitor?" Some gasped. Others looked away. One student, a young woman near the edge of the mat, clenched her fists, face flushed with quiet shame. She knew this wasn't right. But no one moved. No one ever moves until it's too late. Brandon inhaled through his nose. Slow, heavy, controlled. He whispered, "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." But Daniel laughed again. "Harder? You're the one putting on the show. Brandon, don't pretend you matter here. You're not even worth the belt around my waist." And something shifted, not in Daniel, not in the students. In Brandon, his shoulders straightened, not with pride, but with resolve. He turned, slowly, to face the man who'd stripped him bare with every word. "You really want this, Daniel?" That voice, still calm, but it carried something deeper now, a warning, a memory, a buried storm about to rise. Daniel grinned, cocky. "Go ahead and try." And with that, the past Brandon had run from stood at the edge of the mat, waiting for him to step back into it. The air changed. You could feel it, like before a thunderstorm. Not loud, not sudden, just this creeping, breathless pressure that settled over every face in the room. One by one, the students fell silent. Some sat, some stood frozen. All eyes locked on Brandon. He stepped forward, slow, measured. Each footfall sounded louder than it should have, like the mat was speaking back to him, reminding him who he used to be, who he'd promised he'd never become again. He didn't puff his chest, didn't raise his hands, just calmly took off his jacket, the dark blue one he always wore, and folded it with care. Gasps rippled across the room. Muscles, old scars, the kind you don't get from janitor work, the kind you only earn through pain and survival. Across the mat, Daniel's face twitched. He hadn't expected that. He thought he was pushing a man with no past, no pride. But now he saw something he hadn't seen before, a quiet confidence that didn't need to yell or flex. The kind of confidence that had stared death in the eyes and come back stronger. Daniel tried to recover. Taking off your coat doesn't make you a fighter, he sneered. You're still just a guy who mops the floor. But it didn't land the same. Some students turned and looked at each other. A few shifted nervously. One even glanced down at the mop leaning against the wall, like it wasn't just a mop anymore, but a symbol they had completely misunderstood. Brandon didn't flinch, didn't smirk, didn't blink. He just looked at Daniel and said, "If I win, you'll apologize to them, all of them. You'll tell them the truth about who you become." It landed like a brick. Daniel paused, visibly thrown off by the calm demand. His ego flared, but something in his gut twisted. Still, he forced a laugh. "Fine, but you won't win. You'll be on the ground begging before this is over." Brandon didn't respond. He stepped onto the mat, slow and silent, as if every step carried the weight of 20 years. And maybe it did. Maybe this wasn't about Daniel at all. Maybe this was a ghost he had to face, the part of himself he'd buried beneath guilt and silence. The room went still, utterly still. Daniel approached with his usual arrogance, cracking his neck, flexing for show. He glanced at his students like a performer checking his crowd before the act. "Look closely," he barked. "This is what it looks like when someone tries to pretend. A janitor playing dress-up." But his words fell flat. Brandon hadn't moved. He just stood there, calm, breathing slow, gaze steady, like the storm inside him had finally found its center. The storm they used to fear. The silent storm. Daniel's voice wavered. He stepped closer, desperate now to reclaim control. "Last chance, Brandon. Bow and walk away. You don't belong here." Brandon's reply was soft, but sharp as a blade. "You're right. I don't belong here. Not because I'm a janitor, but because this dojo has forgotten what real strength looks like." A hush fell over the students. Even Daniel hesitated. Somewhere in that sentence, they felt a shift. This wasn't going to be the fight they expected. Daniel launched first, hard and fast, like a man trying to win in one blow. His fist swung with fury, his kicks snapped sharp. But Brandon didn't strike. He moved, graceful, effortless, like water slipping through cracks. The first punch missed, so did the second. The third never even came close. Brandon didn't hit back. He just stepped around, watching, like a master watching a student who hadn't learned yet. The room held its breath. Daniel grew frantic. His movements became wild, uncontrolled. Sweat beaded on his brow. Every miss added fire to his rage. He couldn't understand, how was this happening? Brandon's voice cut through it all. "Calm. Is this the strength you bragged about?" Daniel roared, unleashing a spinning kick, one that could have broken ribs. But again, air. Brandon simply tilted. A half step. Daniel's foot sliced past like it had been aimed at a ghost. And he stumbled. That stumble wasn't just physical. It cracked something inside him. A piece of pride, of certainty, gone. He looked around and saw it. The way his students were watching now. Not cheering. Not laughing. Learning. And Daniel hated it. He came again. Harder. Sloppier. Swinging blind with everything he had left. And Brandon? Brandon didn't move this time. He stood firm. Face calm. Fist still. "Stop," he said. "You're embarrassing yourself." Daniel froze mid-swing, chest heaving. You haven't even hit me." Brandon nodded. "I don't need to." Silence fell again, a silence that held weight, like truth finally entering the room. And then something shifted. One student stepped forward, Emily Chun, voice soft but steady. Brandon, don't hold back. Not for him. For us. Brandon blinked, and something broke loose inside. Not rage, not revenge, but clarity. The words hit like a spark in dry grass. Brandon turned just slightly to look at Emily. Her eyes weren't pleading. They weren't afraid. They were believing in him, in what he stood for. He hadn't felt that in years. Not since Tony. That face, his best friend, his brother in arms, lying motionless on a mat all those years ago, still haunted him like a ghost chained to memory. It was the reason he left everything. The reason he kept his fists closed. The reason he never fought again. But now, something was different. He wasn't here to prove anything. He was here to protect what mattered. Daniel came at him again, wild, desperate. Brandon's eyes narrowed, not in rage, but focus. He stepped aside with surgical precision, letting the strike fly harmlessly past. Another attack. Another dodge. Then he spoke. This is your final warning, Daniel. I don't want to hurt you, but I won't let you hurt yourself or anyone else, just to prove something that doesn't exist. Daniel froze for a breath. But pride doesn't go down easy. He charged again. And this time, Brandon moved. Not to evade. To end it. One clean step. A pivot. His hand caught Daniel's arm mid-swing, redirected it with calm control, and with motion so fluid it felt like wind itself. Brandon swept Daniel's legs from beneath him. Daniel hit the mat hard. Not brutal. Not dangerous. Just final. The room stopped breathing. Brandon didn't gloat, didn't raise his fists. He stepped back and extended a hand. Martial arts isn't about crushing others, he said softly. It's about mastering yourself and seeing worth in people, even when you've forgotten how. Daniel stared up, chest heaving, heart pounding. His pride lay shattered in pieces too sharp to pick up. And in Brandon's eyes, there was no mockery, just empathy. Daniel took the hand. A stunned silence gave way to a breathless shift in the room. Respect, real, human, humble respect, began to ripple like quiet thunder. Then Emily's voice, trembling with truth. Everyone, he's not just a janitor. He's Brandon Lewis. The silent storm. Gasps broke out like dominoes falling. Phones lit up. Names searched. Images confirmed. The man standing quiet in the center of the ring. The man they mocked, dismissed, was a 5-time world champion. A legend. Students looked at each other, mouths open. He's a legend, but why is he here? Why didn't anyone know? Brandon turned toward them, his voice calm but thick with weight. Because I didn't come here to be admired. I came here to disappear. To forget who I was and what I did. Daniel, still on the ground, whispered hoarsely, You really are the silent storm. Brandon nodded. I was, but today I'm just a man. A man trying to live with his mistakes, and maybe teach others not to make the same ones. He looked out at the faces now watching him not with pity, but with reverence. I'm not here to win fights. I'm here to show you that the greatest strength isn't in how hard you hit, but in how much you can carry without breaking. Daniel's voice cracked. I was wrong. Brandon's eyes held his. We all are, sometimes. But what matters is whether you rise after falling, and who you become when applause fades. Silence. Then, quietly, haltingly, Daniel turned to the students. I need to apologize. To all of you, I let pride blind me. I forgot what this dojo was supposed to stand for. His voice shook. I mocked someone I didn't understand, and I see now I've got a lot to learn. Brandon placed a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder. And for the first time that night, Daniel didn't flinch. He stood, slow, heavy with shame, but upright. And beside him stood the very man he tried to humiliate. The man who could have destroyed him, but chose instead to teach him. In the corner, the gym owner, Mr. Harris, stepped forward. Brandon, he said, eyes wide with a mix of awe and guilt. I had no idea. If you're willing, I'd like to offer you the position of head instructor. A hush. Then, slowly, Brandon nodded. Not with pride, not with swagger, just quiet acceptance. If I can help others understand what respect really means, I'll do it. 3 months passed. Sunlight poured through the gym's tall windows each morning, catching dust and soft beams as students poured in, not to fight, but to grow. You could feel the change in the walls. Laughter replaced pressure. Respect replaced fear. Brandon didn't walk like a champion. He walked like a man at peace. The kind of peace that only comes after carrying something unbearable and learning to live anyway. He didn't just teach footwork or blocks. He taught how to breathe when you're panicking, how to stay still when everything in you wants to explode, how to lose without hating yourself, and win without disrespecting others. Parents lined up to enroll their kids, not because he was famous, but because something in his presence felt safe, real. Children who once cowered in corners now stood tall. Shy teens started helping each other up after drills. And in every class, Brandon reminded them, real strength is invisible until it's needed. Across town, in a smaller gym that smelled of rubber mats and second chances, Daniel Mitchell started over. No trophies, no audience, just silence and truth. He'd lost everything, reputation, students, pride, but in that loss, he found something he never had, humility. Daniel began teaching again. But this time, he listened more than he spoke. He admitted when he didn't know something. He shared his failures. His voice cracked sometimes when he told the story of the man he once mocked, and the mercy he received instead of punishment. One quiet evening, as Daniel wiped sweat from the mat after class, a familiar figure stood in the doorway. Brandon. No words at first. Just two men standing in the glow of fluorescent lights, the past hanging between them like dust in the air. Daniel stepped forward, eyes cautious. Why'd you come? Brandon gave a soft smile. To see how far you come. Daniel lowered his eyes. Still have a long way to go. Brandon nodded. So do I. They stood in silence, then sat, no ring between them this time. Just truth. You know, Daniel said slowly, you changed everything for me, not by fighting, but by not fighting back when you could have crushed me. Brandon looked at him, voice low. That's because I've already lived through the pain of what happens when you swing too hard at the wrong moment. Daniel exhaled. I won't forget it again. They shook hands, not as fighters, but as men who had both lost themselves once and chose to return better. A year later, the city buzzed with quiet pride over two gyms, each so different, yet bound by the same code. Brandon's students called him coach with reverence. Daniel's students called him sensei with affection. And both men taught more than kicks and strikes. They taught that apologies matter, that change is possible, that you don't have to win to be great, and you don't have to be perfect to be respected. On the anniversary of that infamous night, the gym held an open class. Kids, teens, adults, packed shoulder to shoulder. Brandon stood at the front, weathered and calm. Daniel stood beside him, no longer ashamed, but quietly proud of who he was becoming. Brandon spoke softly. Don't chase strength to hurt others. Chase it so you can carry your pain without dropping it on someone else. The crowd hushed. Some nodded. Some swallowed lumps in their throat. Then he smiled, not the smile of a fighter who'd won, but of a man who had nothing left to hide. The greatest victories in life don't happen in arenas, under lights, or before crowds. They happen in the quiet, when a man faces his own shame, forgives himself, and still chooses to stand. Because true power is walking away from who you were and still having the courage to come back better.